They tell us money is simple: paper, numbers, value. But that's the lie we all agreed to believe. Because the truth is this: the US government doesn't just spend money. It creates it, lends it to itself, and then buys its own debt. A loop so perfect, it runs forever, fueling wars, markets, and dreams, without ever printing a single real dollar. This isn't a secret. It's a system, an invisible engine that powers every paycheck, every crisis, every illusion of control. And the deeper you look, the more one question starts to echo. Speech balloon: what if money itself is the greatest illusion ever built? We all think we understand money. We grow up believing a simple story: that dollars represent value, banks protect it, and governments manage it responsibly. But what if that's not how it works? What if the government doesn't just spend money? It also creates it, lends it to itself, and then buys its own debt? It sounds impossible, like a paradox, but this system exists. It's the foundation of modern capitalism. Every paycheck, every tax payment, every so-called economic miracle passes through it. This isn't a conspiracy. It's design, so elegant and so invisible that we've stopped questioning it. Because once you understand how the US government truly prints, lends, and buys its own money, you begin to see the economy for what it really is: not a market, but a machine. And that machine runs on belief. When people imagine printing money, they picture giant presses, green ink, and stacks of cash. That image is comforting. It feels real. But in reality, less than 5% of all US dollars exist as paper. The rest are digital, numbers on screens, electronic promises. And those numbers aren't created by miners or machines, but by keystrokes at the Federal Reserve. When the Fed buys a Treasury bond, it doesn't reach into a vault. It simply creates money electronically and credits a bank's account. No printing, no trucks, no gold. Just numbers, real only because we agree they are. It's the purest form of power ever invented, to create something out of nothing, and make everyone treat it as real. The US financial system works like a pyramid. At the bottom, cash and reserves. In the middle, deposits. At the top, credit and derivatives. Each layer depends on faith in the one below. And at the base sits the US government, the silent guarantor of it all. So when you hear that the government is printing money, don't imagine paper. Imagine trust being printed. Every empire hides a paradox at its core. For the United States, that paradox is this: it borrows from itself. It may sound strange, but this loop is the backbone of the global economy. The US Treasury spends more than it earns and covers the gap by issuing Treasury bonds. Banks, corporations, and foreign nations buy those bonds. When demand isn't enough, the Federal Reserve steps in and buys the bonds using money it just created. Now, the Treasury has dollars to spend, and the Fed holds the government's debt as an asset. Debt becomes money, and money becomes debt. It's a hall of mirrors, each reflection convincing enough to believe in. This system was born during crisis. During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln ran out of gold and taxes weren't enough. So he did something no nation had done so boldly before. He printed money back not by metal, but by faith. Greenbacks. They were risky, fragile, but they worked, because people believed. It wasn't gold that saved the Union. It was belief. And from that moment on, every American war, crisis, or recession was financed not by savings, but by debt. By the 20th century, debt was no longer a last resort. It was a business model. During World War II, the US borrowed more money than ever before, and the Fed bought most of it. Factories ran, unemployment fell, prosperity soared. Debt had created wealth. As long as people believed in the dollar, there was no limit to how much the government could borrow. It was no longer a market. It was a machine of belief. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement tied all major currencies to the US dollar, and the dollar to gold. The US didn't just print money anymore, it printed the world's money. But by the 1960s, the government was spending far beyond its means. Foreign countries started demanding gold instead of dollars. In 1971, President Richard Nixon made a quiet but seismic announcement. The United States will no longer convert dollars to gold. Gold was gone. Only faith remained. Money was no longer a claim on metal. It was a claim on confidence. And somehow, that confidence proved stronger than gold. After Nixon's move, the dollar floated freely. Its value was no longer fixed. It was measured in trust. The government discovered a new kind of power. It could borrow infinitely, as long as the world believed it could always pay. In 2008, when the financial system nearly collapsed, the Fed didn't print cash. It printed credit. Trillions of dollars appeared, used to buy debt and rescue banks. Markets recovered, Wall Street was saved, and the public quietly accepted it. Because the alternative, collapse, was unthinkable. The government had become both borrower and lender, both buyer and seller, both the house and the casino, and yet the illusion held, because everyone needed to believe it would. Over time, the machine became self-aware. The Federal Reserve no longer controls money by printing it, but by setting the conditions under which everyone else does. Interest rates, credit rules, liquidity programs, they shape behavior, not just economics. This isn't command, it's orchestration. Every press release, every phrase like inflation target or maximum employment isn't meant to describe reality, it's meant to shape it. The Fed no longer prints money, it prints belief. Today, the dollar is the oxygen of global trade. To buy oil, you need dollars. To get dollars, you buy U.S. debt. To buy that debt, you must trust the U.S. government. It's a loop where belief has become infrastructure. The world doesn't just use the dollar, it depends on it. The machine is evolving once again. Money no longer lives in vaults, it lives in the cloud. The new frontier is central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, programmable, traceable, even expirable money. Every dollar could be code, every transaction traceable, every payment time limited. Stimulus checks could expire, loans could be restricted to certain products, taxes could be deducted instantly. It's efficiency, at the cost of privacy. It's control, disguised as modernization. The money of the future won't be visible or tangible. It will be algorithmic, and just like before, it won't rely on gold or paper. It will rely on belief in the system itself. Money has always been about belief. Once, gold was sacred, then paper became political. Now, code is institutional. But the story hasn't changed. The government still prints, lends, and buys its own money. Only the tools have evolved. What was once done with ink and paper is now done with light and data. But the architecture remains the same. Control the flow, shape the story, protect the illusion. That's the unwritten constitution of modern economics. And maybe one day, when the next generation asks, who really creates money? The answer will be simple: no one. We all do, by believing in it.